Hey guys, Exile here with yet another Detonate Dead Ignite Elementalist guide, this time updated for 3.22, Trial of the Ancestors. I will say this build pretty much changed absolutely nothing from 3.21 to 3.22. The only difference being is that in this guide I will be having a couple different versions of the more endgame PoB so that people who want to play with a more damage-based DD setup can do so, because I will have multiple trees. But yeah, nothing much has changed. It still has the smoothest, or it still uses the best leveling skill from 1 to 28, which is Rolling Magma. And from 28 to Maps, where you run the Armor Brand and Cremation, it's pretty much the strongest two skills from 28 to Maps. And then when we get to Maps, we swap to a build that has the same damage in T1 maps that it does in T16 maps. So you're going to have no problems getting your Void Stones, and especially this league, that Essence is on the map device. It's even better, because if you use the dual Essence node on your Atlas tree, you can kill the second Essence and detonate the second Essence's corpse and kill the first Essence with that corpse, essentially. So it's really nice, and it just also makes it nice so we can do Essence even more this league than we could in the past. But yeah, with all that being said, I'm going to get into a bit of the mechanics of DD and explaining how it works. So if you already understand how this build works, then you can skip ahead in the video. I'll put some timestamps in the description below. But with that being said, first thing we're going to go over is the Specter. So you have a couple options here. You can use the golden guys in Solaris Temple level 2. The only thing that's good for is it basically just lets you see the corpses easier because they're golden. But Kitava Herald is the exact same thing, it's just harder to see. So we're going to go grab a Kitava Herald. So you come to Act 10, you put your Spectre gem in, which I have already done, and then you can just spam Desecrate as you go in the canals until you get your Kitava Herald. Make sure you have your Enable Corpse Targeting keybind on. Mine is Shift P, so I'm just going to spam Desecrate and look for a Kitava Herald. There it is, and then press my Spectre keybind. Oh, this is like stretching my hands on the keyboard. Boom. Alright, we've got our Spectre. Now we can go back to our hideout, and I will explain how the build works. Alright, so you don't have to Desecrate or anything once you take it as a Spectre. You're kind of chilling. I'm going to put my gem back in, and it will pretty much always be in your corpse pool forever now. Okay, I'm going to quickly showcase, I'm not going to do the full Maven, I just want to show you guys how the build works with its interaction with defiled forces. So essentially, we are going to Desecrate Detonate Dead in the hopes of hitting our Spectre Corpse, and once we hit that Spectre Corpse on the boss, we are going to use our Arcanist brand to refresh that Ignite from our Defiled Forces node pretty much indefinitely. I will say there's about like a 1 to 1.5 screens where if you get too far away, the Ignite will fall off. And you also have to make sure that you keep your Arcanist brand in the enemy, so it lasts for 3 seconds. With Malevolence on, it lasts for 4.2, so as long as you keep your curses up on the boss, you'll pretty much keep refreshing that Ignite. So, just going to show how it works. This is an UberMaven. I'm not going to full kill the boss, like I said. I just want to kind of show you how the build functions. So, we're going to put down our Arcanist brand, and we're just going to start fishing for a big Ignite. So, we just go ahead and spam the DD. It's a little annoying with Diadem, but
When I'm ready, I'm not.
that one looks like a decent sized Ignite.
Cascade of pain. Take this.
I will say this character's gear is not really optimized for... Oh, there we definitely had a big corpse there. She's getting melted. And yeah, that's just the first phase. So yeah, you may be saying it took you a while to hit that corpse. You know, it's kind of inconsistent damage, and yeah, that's probably the biggest downside I would say that DD has. So the main problem with it is you have to line up your Convergence proc with an EO proc, also while hitting your big corpse with a shock on them. So it's it can take a bit to get to that point, but when you do get to that point, it deals a shit ton of damage. And while you're mapping, you quite simply don't have to worry about hitting that corpse because the monsters in the map have enough HP on the corpse life to just clear the map. So gonna go ahead and go into a map and kind of show you that a bit. So quick mapping showcase.
Oops, clumsy me.
I will say this character's gear is probably like day 3 in Trade League. The diadem is kind of just sitting there because I set this character up leagues ago. You don't really need diadem at all.
Chance.
I'm not even using an aura to make up for the mana that diadem accomplishes.
Wisdom.
But yeah, so you basically just run through the map, desecrate DD, and ignite prolif will take care of pretty much everything.
Wisdom.
And if you run into an essence, that's generally when you want to use your
Rashield.
Vol Detonate Dead, like this. First one will die, and then the second one instantly dies. Pretty straightforward, very smooth to map with. It even becomes more smooth to map with when you have haste equipped. And yeah, that's kind of how the build works, and then we'll move over to PoB a bit so I can talk about the gear and talk about the trees. Alright, and now that we're in the PoB, I wanted to talk a bit about the leveling. Now, I do have a full leveling VOD, so I'm not going to go crazy in depth for this. If you want to watch the leveling VOD, it is on my channel, probably the last video I uploaded. But yeah, we pretty much just start out by grabbing Firewalker life and getting the really early Fire Mastery. And then from there, we pivot to going toward the left side of the tree for Templar. We grab EO. After that, we grab the Aura Wheels. You can kind of follow my steps here. I have a shit ton of trees to show you guys. And as far as the skills are concerned, I have the Stormblast Mine set up still in here, even though I prefer the Rolling Magma at this point. But if you hate it, then don't feel free to use Stormblast Mine. But yeah, so we're pretty much just going to run Rolling Magma, and we grab our auras level 16 until 28. At level 28, we use Armageddon Brand Cremation. I have a bunch of link options in here depending on the colors you get, so just kind of play around with that based on what 4-link you get on League Start for both skills. Unfortunately, there's not a good green for Armageddon Brand, so yeah, that just is what it is. After Library, I like to use Determination Haste, but mana can get a little annoying even with Illyra, so I honestly recommend using Haste, Herald of Ash, and then using Determination Haste maybe later in the story if you manage to get Eldritch Battery early. You just kind of have to play around with the mana and what you prefer. If you're an HC, you can just not use Haste past like Act 5 and just use Determination instead, just to be more safe. We have Wave for our exposure and Arcane Surge Flame Dash, just linked together. And then our, randomly we can just have Desecrate Flame Wall. They don't need to be linked or anything. And then our Shield Charge. So pretty gem intensive early. You got to really look for those sockets. And the lab order is pretty much Shaper of Flames into Mastermind into Heart of Destruction into Bastion. So that's pretty much what we're going to go for. And that's kind of how the leveling works. And then we pivot to the day 1 to day 2 setup. And I'll talk a little bit about the gear and show the damage that you get with that gear. So early on, you really want to get a exposure pair of gloves as fast as possible on your implicit so that you can stop using Wave of Conviction. We have our Wave of Conviction in our Arcanist brand pretty much until we get that exposure, and then we just drop that gem and replace it with Flame Surge. I have a 5-link in here just to kind of show how much damage you'll be doing pretty early on. And then talking about the gear here a bit, most items are just going to be 2 mods with a crafted mod, maybe 3 mods with a crafted mod. I tried to keep it a little more basic this time around. So for weapon, you want to search for like basically these 3 mods. Spell damage is useless for us, so don't try to get that. +1 is pretty bad as well, so don't go for that either. And then for most of the armor items, it's going to be a 1 res suppression and then crafted life. So that's the shield here. The helmet is a similar idea. You want to get the Fizz as fire implicit pretty quickly if you're playing in HC, and you can also, if you get life on this helmet, you can craft Fizz's Ellie. Chest, we just want defensive stats, no life because we're going to take the life mastery, and then like a res and crafted Gravicious mod. So you want to get something similar with like 3 or 4 of these mods. Gloves, typical suppression, res, life. Boots, I didn't put suppression on these because I didn't want to put suppress on every item, but yeah, just life, res, crafted move speed. Amulet, really want something with damage over time multiplier early, and I like to annoyance suppression early on just to get to that cap sooner. And then for rings, you know, just life res, some dex is good. The shock craft is also good as well when you can get it. And one thing I changed this time around is I put a crystal belt in the POB just to help solve our ES problems with using our divine blessing early. So use the crystal belt and don't be afraid to like craft ES or use like a ES evasion hybrid base here or there just to get enough so you can cast your haste or malevolence. And yeah, that pretty much wraps up this gear. I just thought about actually that I wanted to add like a really basic, like I'm about to enter maps kind of gear level. Like last time, people kind of thought my day 1 to day 2 gear was a little unrealistic, so I just wanted to put in like, you know, the gear that you'll have walking into maps, and just to like kind of get an idea of, you know, where you're gonna start at. I mean, even with like the most bare bones basic gear, like just a weapon with cast speed on it, and then just craft fire damage, that's gonna work fine. And you know, every other item is just gonna be literally life and resistances where you can get it, and like very bare bones items that you're going to get while you're leveling. Just this stuff. The one thing I have on here is the regen ES Veiled Craft. That's really nice to have in your belt just so you don't have to worry about energy shield at all, so you can cast your haste or malevolence divine blessing. I prefer haste early on, as soon as you want. I do recommend using a heavy belt just to help with the attribute problems early, and a jade amulet, and try to get some attributes on your gear if possible. If you don't get attributes in your gear, you know, click these nodes where available just to kind of solve that. You really want to look for a careful planning unique as fast as possible. This jewel right here, and add it in this slot so that it like pretty much negates all your dexterity problems forever. But yeah, I just wanted to put in like a quick gear set just for like what you're gonna enter maps with, just so you guys have like kind of an understanding. And then from this fresh mapping gear, you kind of want to progress toward the day 1 to day 2 gear. But yeah, hopefully that helps you guys. Just thought I'd add that in. Okay, now we get to the point where we start talking about the late game gear and setup for this build. So I have 2 trees. I have the offensive tree and the defensive marauder tree. So quite a big difference in DPS for both the trees. So keep that in mind. But again, even on the defensive tree, I feel like it has more than enough damage to clear like the whole game. But I wanted to give people multiple options. So these trees are pretty much after you get T1 suppression on a lot of items. So in the offensive setup, we use a regular Void Scepter instead of a Oscillating Scepter. And the defensive setup, we use the Oscillating Scepter because we need EO on our Scepter in order to spend the points elsewhere on the tree. So you have to swap between those depending on which tree you're on. For our shield, we really want Res Suppress, and then because we're Elementalists, we can use the It That Fled craft to gain fire as extra chaos. So that plus life. For our helmet, we go for life, suppress, res, and then crafted fizz as Ellie with the essence mod for increased mana reservation, efficiency of skills. So this combined with the implicit allows us to run multiple 50% auras with Justin Enlighten 3. If you don't have this Enlighten 3 or you don't have that mana reservation stuff yet, you run Tempest Shield instead. So it's just Enlighten 3, not Enlighten 4, so not too bad. And then for our chest, we're just going to reforge defense a bunch in order to get high armor. And then we look for high suppress and res as well with an open prefix. Gloves are pretty straightforward. You just want really, really good suffixes, essentially. And then if you luck into life, that's nice. If not, craft it. For boots, we're really going to want T1 suppress. We are going to essence boots for avoid shock, so we can solve shock a lot easier. So the way we're solving shock is with the implicit plus avoid being shocked essence mod on boots, and then a ghastly eye jewel with avoid shock on it. And you can try to unveil the movement speed cannot be chilled, but I wouldn't recommend that for a while because it can get quite expensive. For amulet, we really want to get life plus dot multi, and then like any res or any useful mod on the other suffix, and then craft effective non-damaging ailments. And then we still want to use Replica Emberwake this league. It's huge damage. Your second ring has to have your focus shock on it, so life res attribute plus focus shock. And belt, I like to go for a Hunter Stygian Vise with life percent life and the chaos res. You can get a shit ton of chaos res just from this belt, and it's a pretty deterministic craft. There's a chance you could get 6 mods and brick it, but if you need help crafting this belt, feel free to ask me. It's not too bad. It was another thing that can get kind of expensive. It's probably going to be like anywhere between 14 and 20 divines, I would say, to craft this. And then I like to run Militant Faith on Elementalist because we really want the armor, and it also helps solve the cost of our blessing. So you get quite a bit of armor from this. You get 4k flat on this tree, and then on the defensive tree, it's quite a bit more, I believe. 5k flat. And then careful planning in trade solves our dex problems pretty much entirely. And yeah, we just want a life dot multi jewel. So that pretty much covers the late game gear. Now I want to talk a little bit about the new support Sadism and why I don't think it's worth running, at least on Ignite DD. So the main problem with this support is actually the 80% less duration of ailments. So the main issue with having really low Ignite duration on DD is that when you run into, let's say, a Fire Ignite resistant rare, it can, with Sadism in, it can essentially become a problem because your Ignite will just not exist on the target because the duration is so low that it just doesn't work. So that's the main issue with it. You can use some investment with Sadism in order to get your duration high enough, but at that point, if you're investing so much just to get a support gem to work, it's just not worth it in my book, and you're better off just doing the tried and true Replica Emberwake plus Swift Affliction setup. And you can, even with this setup, you can still get a pretty healthy Ignite duration of about 2.87 seconds on this tree, and then on the defensive tree, we lose a little bit of duration because of the trees differences, so 2.56. That's still enough to still ignite fire and ignite resistant rares. And it also gives you a little more wiggle room to curse monsters. So yeah, that's why I don't recommend running it. If you want to try to run it though, you replace it with Swift Affliction, and you're really going to have to mess with your ignite duration in PoB because it can get quite annoying. Alright, and I just wanted to showcase a quick UberMaven, as that's probably the most profitable boss in trade. I will say that Ubers on this build are far from free. You need to still play the fights well, so keep that in mind. If you want to farm Ubers instantly and like one-shot them and not actually have to do mechanics, this is probably not the build for you. But yeah, this is a more defensive setup, very defensive tree, not a lot of damage. And I'm running Eternal Damnation, so even losing damage from the amulet. But this is the gear. I think it was like 5-6 days of GSF with some friends. The diadem is not required at all. That's accounted for in the PoB, but I'm just wearing it on this character because I don't really want to brick it. You do swap out Grace for a Purity on Ubers, in my opinion. So that's what I've done. I put in Purity of Lightning over our Grace. And yeah, with that being said, let's get into UberMaven. I would say this is probably the easiest Uber for DD. The other ones are quite a bit harder and you do a lot less damage. But if you want to be farming UberMavens, very good build for it. Boom, first phase. Exarch is the hardest Uber to farm, but luckily Exarch doesn't drop anything good because my boots suck. Haha! I thought they were going to buff him this league, but unfortunately they aren't. because the dogs on Exarch have 75 fire res, so you literally are doing way more damage to the boss than you deal to the dogs. Just annoying.
I will have what I want. This will not be an escape.
Sometimes if the ads are really bad, I will just use a Vault DD on them. But I think these ones are okay. Top right, top.
Stand still.
We go over and drop our degens. Can also spec Lethe Shade for Ubers. I'm not sure if this character has it spec, but it's an option, and I would recommend using it, actually. You definitely want to stay in Ignite range as much as you can. I'm definitely running out of Ignite range occasionally, which is just my bad. Drop these off. As you can see, Lethe Shade would help a lot for like dropping degens off, because we don't really have a lot of regen, so. You can take the Fire Mastery for a little bit of regen, but it's not like super significant. I will say I tend to overcast my DDs a lot more than you should, but I would just rather try to go for the procs aligning kind of scenario. We got the Quinn pattern, nice.
Scurry.
Alright, we're gonna wait till she teleports and did a Vault DD with my shock and focus. Huge damage. Gonna drop these off after this cascade. Hopefully we can keep the ignite on her while we drop these. I don't think we're gonna be able to. I don't actually know if it's still on her. Don't think she's losing health still.
Stand still.
Maven definitely very good for DD. You do so much damage on this boss compared to others. I'm just gonna Vault DD this heart, why not?
Arrogant toy.
Go ahead and take like one cascade just to kind of show you guys a little bit of the defense.
Still.
Obviously I have like Molten Shell, but this character has quite a bit of armor, so Molten Shell on this kind of setup is really good. Left, top, right, top.
Scurry, scurry.
Cascade surely someday. You can see the inconsistency of DD damage here. I'm not even sure really if I've hit a good corpse yet. Well, I think we have. She has a little bit more HP. Cascade tanking. So you would have to life blast through the last tick if you tank the literal entire thing, which obviously you shouldn't do. Probably shouldn't have used that Vault DD in there, because she's most likely going to phase.
This will not be an escape.
Left, top, left, right, top, right.
Scurry, scurry. Stand still.
I don't have Life Fast, and I don't have the Pantheon to give me Life Fast back, I think, so we're just going to have to kind of game on this boss.
Take this. Stand still.
Game it up a little bit, you know. My shock, unfortunately, was out of range there. I think we should be okay. Just need to not...
Stand still.
Alright, there we go. Easy enough. And yeah, that was just an UberMaven. Holy tink. Volume warning. Nice loot, dude. But yeah, like I said, Uber is not crazy easy. This is like the best Uber for DD, but definitely doable if you've done them before. That's pretty much Ignite DD Elementalist. If you have any questions, if you play this build on League Start, feel free to ask me in my stream. I can pretty much answer most things. And if you want to see somebody else do the progression, I believe Ben is probably going to play Detonate Dead on League Start. I may not, but I also might, not sure yet. So yeah, good luck on League Start. Let me know how it went if you played this build, and have a great day, everyone.